Morning, all. All right, so we're going to talk about Nashville to start things off today. The Nashville Predators, a team that has managed to be a playoff team the last couple of years. However, there have been signs of erosion from where they were a couple of years before that when they were President's Trophy winners. And I really think this is the year we see a drop-off from them for two reasons. First off, I'm not that convinced at the center spot for them. And secondly, division's pretty tough. So for Nashville, the starting point is going to be special teams, which has been a position that really, whether it's power play or penalty kill, this is something within the organization that was a problem last year. Their power play 17.6%, which was 23rd. Needs to be better. Their penalty kill 75.6%, which was 29th. Now, I think Dallas went like 10 for 10 against them to start the season. It was some ridiculous number, but they didn't have what they needed on the penalty kill, and this has been a problem for years now, and so we'll see whether or not that gets fixed this year. Fixing their special teams might help them defy gravity for a little bit longer in terms of their standing, and maybe they end up finding themselves a wild card spot if they can get that together. Their goals for 151, which was 22nd overall in the NHL. Their goals against 154, which was 11th. Their defense, solid. Their goaltending is good. Their defense and their goaltending will hold them in games. Can they find enough goals to win those games is really the question for me. So notable draft picks since 2015. Trennan was drafted 55th overall in 2015. Carrier was drafted 115th. Very deep draft in 2015. I think that we're going to look back on this one as being almost at 2003 levels. There's a lot of really good players in that draft. 2016, they draft Dante Fabro at 17. Sam Girard at 47, who then they traded off to Colorado because they felt like they didn't necessarily need Girard depth-wise. We look at this team now, and it's like if they'd kept Girard, right? Rem Pitlick was drafted 76th overall. 2017, they drafted Tolvanen at 30th overall, and this past season, it looked like he's finally ready to take that next step. 2018, they only had 4 draft picks, and the earliest draft pick they had was number 111. So that's the year in 2018 where you're all in, you're going for it. 2019, Tomasino drafted 24th overall. May very well find himself in the lineup this year. I'm 50-50 on that, though. 2020, Askarov drafted 11th overall, first goaltender to go. He is the next goaltender for Nashville. And Evangelista, 42, may find himself getting a chance sooner or later. I'm guessing a little bit later. But anyways, yeah, so their exits, Pekka Rinne, the loss of Rinne, and I understand that he didn't necessarily have great seasons the last couple of years, but I think just his overall standing within the team, I think that's a big loss for them. Ellis, of course, traded to Philadelphia. That looks like a big loss as well. Although it's not like they didn't get a defenseman back in that draft. It's a matter of, how this is going to go from here for that blue line. Haula, of course, exits. Yarncroke with the exit as well. Arvidsson traded to LA. And Richardson. I haven't heard Richardson's retired, but I would think he's going to retire. I would think, unless he gets a tryout somewhere, which is possible. I like Brad Richardson. I like the fight with the guy. New faces in the lineup. Cody Glass really could be the big one. Cody Glass is a center. First-round draft pick out of Vegas. Needed a new start. If Glass can come in and make that difference, their attack could get a lot better, and it could help their power play as well. Luff has been added. He's a depth player. Played for LA last year. Myers, of course, comes over in the Ellis deal. Tennyson signs as a free agent, as does David Riddick, who should be backing up UC Saros, who gets his first year as the starter without Pekka Rinne there, and maybe some concern about if I have a couple of bad games, Rinne could take the job. And I'm sure it's a friendly rivalry, but it's going to be different with Riddick there as the backup now than it was with Rinne. So the record over the last 3 years does show that there's definitely been a change. So they were 47, 29, and 6, first in the Central in 2018, 2019. 2019, 2020, 35, 36, and 8, which was fourth in the Central. The record actually gets better this past season, 31, 23, and 2. Again, fourth in the Central. Different teams in the Central, but still the same name for the division. I do see again that when I look at the lineups, I think Dallas has a bounce back year. I think Minnesota can keep it up. I think Chicago's going to be a lot better. And for me, it's Nashville that's the team that takes that hit. In the playoffs, they've had problems in the playoffs. Round 1, they lost to Dallas in 2019. In the qualifying round, they lost to Arizona in 2020. And, of course, in 2021, this year, they lost to Carolina in the first round. So they haven't been able to get out of the first round. Their record hasn't been as good as what it was when they were, obviously, winning President's Trophy and all that. And that was 2018. So it feels like this could very well be a season where Nashville misses the playoffs and has some questions to answer when the season's done. So let's take a look at their forward group. Forsberg, excellent player. Staying healthy is the one question mark with him at times. Johansson needs to bounce back from what was statistically a poor season for him. Cunnin, good player. Duchesne, expensive contract, needs to get better. Granlund is back. We'll see how things work for him this year. Grimaldi is still here, but should he be in the top 6 or should he be on the third line? Ideally. Below that, you've got Tolvanen, who could push his way up the roster. Glass, who could also push his way up the roster. And Cousins, who has that sandpaper that you like to have in your lineup. Jeannot, who impressed the team a lot, and I think he's going to be prominent this year. Sissons, Olivier has some fight to him as well. Trennan could end up in that lineup. There could very well be a player that doesn't make the lineup that ends up getting moved before the start of the season. Luff, Rem Pitlick, McCarron, and Cole Smith. And I only say that because if you're a GM and you're looking at the team and saying, well, we'd like to move this guy down to the minors, but we'll probably lose him on waivers, that's when you pick up the phone, you call GMs and find somebody who might be willing to take him. So defenseman. This has always been the strength for Nashville. Losing Ellis hurts. Does Fabro have that ability to jump into the top 4? Anytime that Nashville's moved on from a defenseman, whether it's Weber, whether it's Suter, whoever they've moved on from, they've always found that depth from within to replace the player. Yossi, Carrier, Ekholm, Myers. Probably your top 4, although Fabro is going to push for that as well. Borowiecki, decent third pairing option. And then they have Benning, they have Harper, they have Tennyson, who they signed as a free agent. Davies, Ferentz, and Allard. This is a team that protected 5 defensemen and 3 forwards in the expansion draft. So they know what they have. They know how strong their defense is. It's the attack. The attack's going to be a problem. Unless guys like Glass, Jeannot, Tolvanen really bring their game up, and then maybe they'll be okay. Goaltenders, Saros, Riddick, and Ingram. Ingram's the interesting one because he's still, I believe he's 24 years of age, and he's been sidetracked on his way to an NHL job. This might be the year where things get really fascinating because Riddick did not have a good year between Calgary and then in Toronto. So if Riddick struggles in training camp, could Ingram beat him out for that job? And that's a question mark that we'll keep an eye on going into training camp. Once we get into training camps, maybe I'll do a video on question marks of which roster spots might be available. Prospects, Philip Tomasino, who might end up on the roster as well. This might be the year where he ends up on the roster. Luke Evangelista, Fedor Svechkov, who is a first-round pick this year, really likes Svechkov's resume and everything I read about Svechkov. He should be excellent. He should be suited to them. The one thing with Svechkov was, even if he had a contract and he was coming over this year, he's not a guy who has that offensive potential. He's not an explosive forward, which is why he was available when Nashville drafted him. Supposed to be excellent shutdown center, but they need that offense. Zachary Leroux is a first-round pick from this year as well. And Yaroslav Askarov, of course, the goalie of the future for them. And when does that take place? Does that happen next season? It's not signed yet, so does that happen next season? When does Askarov actually come over? Good question for Nashville. The good news is, with Saros, he's young. He's just starting his time as the starter in Nashville. He might be okay with Askarov staying overseas for a while longer. So their Stanley Cup odds are currently at 40-1, and they've gotten longer since the odds were posted for this season. And I wouldn't be surprised if they get a lot longer than that. Their last Stanley Cup, there is no Stanley Cup in their history. Prediction for me is 7th in the Central. I have them finishing ahead of Arizona and behind everybody else. But I don't think they're a team you can necessarily write off because we've done it before. We've been here before. This team, we've predicted their demise before, and they've managed to overcome that. So we'll see if this is the year that some of the moves made by David Poile bite him, or if he just can't be stopped. And this team somehow makes the playoffs, and he ends up looking really good for the deals he made in the offseason. We'll see. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. Oh, and their schedule. I'm like, there's got to be something. I'm forgetting their schedule. Their schedule, honestly, is pretty good in their favor to start the season. They're at home against Seattle on the 14th, Carolina on the 16th, LA on the 19th, the Rangers on the 21st. So they have 4 games at home. Whole first week is at home. Then they go to Winnipeg on the 23rd, Minnesota on the 24th. So there's a back-to-back there. 26th, they're back home. They're against San Jose. And on the 30th, so 4 days in between, they're at home against the New York Islanders. 6 out of 8 to start the season are at home. If they can get that fast start, right? All right, so there you go. Their schedule, and I think I've got everything on the board. I, in fact, do. Thank you guys so much for all your support. As I already stated before, I will talk to you again soon.